Je pense que I believe we have the director with us tonight.
Yes.
Yay! Come on inside. Oh, j'aimerais qu'on applaudisse. This is a beautiful, wonderful movie.
Thank you. Thank you.
You can have a seat. You can have a seat. You can have a seat. Yes. I don't want to mispronounce your name.
Stuart Connelly.
Connelly. Okay, cool.
Thank you.
So we're very grateful to have you today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful, wonderful festival.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. But it's a great film. It's
Thank
a
you.
really great film and very intelligently done.
Did you guys enjoy it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Alors, your questions. Yes?
Just out of curiosity, how long did it take you to write the story? And how were you able to, not most importantly, but crucially, get parties interested to finance this kind of a story?
Yes, that's the magic question. I tend to be a slow writer, but this particular project, which is my first film that I've directed, I wrote very quickly. I wrote it in about, is this too loud? I wrote it in about 7 days, sort of a feverish thing, but as you can see from the film, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. There isn't really too many wasted parts to it. Yeah. Maybe, you know what, you guys can probably hear me without this,
Oh,
right?
maybe you can take the other one, actually.
Yeah, maybe that's a little bit better. Hi there. So it sort of came to me fully formed, and I knew that I wanted to write something about the racial issues in my country and across the world. I had just finished writing a book with Martin Luther King's chief speechwriter and confidant, a man named Clarence Jones, who was 82 at the time, and he told me that I needed to keep doing this work, but I'm not really a historian. The book I wrote was about the March on Washington, which is celebrating the 50th anniversary last month. And so I thought about doing another history book, and I said, no, I think I need to do something that uses the storytelling capabilities that I've been working on all this time, which is screenwriting. And so I started thinking about it, and I started thinking about a lot of films where the main character may be African American, but that's almost incidental. It's because Denzel Washington wanted to play that particular person, he becomes an African American character. But beyond that, there is no characterization, there is no unique part. And so I thought about turning that around and saying, well, what if I write a film that the central conceit has to do with the main character's skin color? And that sort of got things started. So that's why it came to me very quickly. And in terms of getting people interested in it to finance, that's always a challenging question, but people fell in love with the script. People thought it was, from their perspective, important and surprising, and they loved the fact that it was a love story at its heart. And I know some of you may have come in late, and the woman that you meet at the end, you also, of course, meet at the beginning, but no one quite knows what to make of her. And I always thought that was an interesting kind of conceit. It's an interracial relationship, but I don't give you enough information to make you tie those two characters together, so oftentimes people don't, which is sort of the point. I wanted this to be a film where you thought about your perspective on race, and no matter who you are, no matter what your race is, no matter how biased or unbiased you may think you are, we all have preconceived notions, and we operate under certain understandings. So part of the fun of this film is to make people really think about what they bring to the table that way. Does that sort of answer your question? We found rich people who fell in love with it, is the short answer. Yes, ma'am.
We talk about once you wrote the script, how you started the casting process and getting the actors that you got.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to have an agent who had a number of pretty well-known clients. She read the script. Her other clients are acting clients, right? So she read the script, she knows because she manages actors, what writers sometimes forget, which is that actors will kill for a good role. And in particular, as I said earlier, it's difficult for African American actors to find roles that aren't stereotypical or that don't make their color sort of meaningless. You know, it's one or the other. They're either a generic action hero who could be of any heritage, or they're some kind of stereotypical African American character. So it was very easy to get people involved for the role of the suspect and for the other character, which is his character's named the other suspect. It was very easy. We kind of had our choice of big names. I mean, some of it was about scheduling and whether they would come or not, but I had a lot of Skype conversations with a lot of household names where they were pleading with me to let them play that role. And that is the unique situation of this particular script. I've never written another script where actors were bugging me and calling me saying, please pick me. That's something unique. But I think it shows in the character of the suspect. If you knew nothing about the film going in, I think you would agree that the character changes so much from the beginning of the film to the end of the film. It shows so many layers and is undoubtedly the smartest character in the film, and that's not often a spotlight that is put on an African American actor. So once we had Mackay in place, the rest was pretty easy. It was, the process of independent film is very simple. Nobody believes you're ever going to get it done until one part falls in place that is reliable, and that's usually your main talent. And then it seems real, and then people start chasing you. And I'm very, very happy with the cast we ended up with. We also dragged them. This is an aside, but I wrote the film in rural Pennsylvania, where I live. And every one of those locations are within a 5 or 6 mile radius of my house. I know them by heart. And when my wife, who's my lead producer, said to me, maybe we should sell the script and let somebody else deal with it, I said no, because I wanted to use the locations that I had actually written about. It doesn't take place in Pennsylvania, but the feel of the towns around where I live and the look was very important to me. And so I convinced her to produce the movie and let me direct it. Anything else?
How long did it take you exactly from beginning to finish, like to write the script and then to the whole process?
Okay, so it was 7 days to write, and barely a word changed after that. There's a bunch of typos, but
7 days?
7 days. 7 days.
From zero?
From zero. I had been thinking about it for a while. I'd been thinking about it, and then I woke up one Sunday morning and started writing, and by the next Sunday, my wife came home from church, and I handed her a script, and I took my children and said, don't even come in the house, just take this, go to Starbucks, read it, and call me in 2 hours. And she had no idea I was really working on it. It was just one of those things. And as I said, I'm not a particularly quick writer. It usually takes me about 3 or 4 months to do a script. But this one, it needed to happen the way it happened. The other thing I would say about this is, we talked a lot with our editor, and our editor is used to throwing things out and fighting with the director. And we don't need this, we don't need that. And the whole issue with this film is there was almost nothing that could be cut out. It was every word, either tells you something that happened before or hints at what's going to happen. There are no deleted scenes, there are no missing scenes. We shot, what you see.
In how long did it last, the shooting?
We had an 18-day shoot.
18
So
days.
it was 3 6-day weeks. It was about this time last year. It was September of last year in Pennsylvania, and we took over the town.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to know, is there something that happened in your life that inspired you to write this?
Well, as I mentioned, I had written that book called Behind the Dream, where I got to talk to, and become very close with an 82-year-old man who was part of Dr. King's inner circle. And I would suppose that I was radicalized by him on some level. I mean, I'd always certainly been a person who passively cared about other people's plights and you know, certainly minorities and the downtrodden, and I cared about it the way liberals care about things, you know, if only the world could be different, and then you write a couple checks every once in a while. I will tell you that my mother growing up was in charge of the International Students Office at the university in our town, and every Thanksgiving when the children would have the kids would have a break, none of these people could go home because it was too far, so they would all come to our house. So our Thanksgivings were always sort of like United Nations Security Council meetings. It was people from every continent, young people, you know, 18, 19, 20, and I was a kid, telling stories, singing songs, cooking food, and that always made me happy. And I always knew that that was an experience that most people didn't have, and I always thought it was for the better. I mean, all you need to do is meet people from different cultures one-on-one, and you understand that we're all the same inside. If it were only that easy, you know, out in the real world. But it was for me, so I always sort of had this idea. I took what my mother did, I took what Dr. Jones instructed me to do, which is continue the message of hope from Dr. King, and I kind of blended it together with what I know how to do, hopefully, which is to tell stories.
Did you have some inspiration about this psychology experiment, you know?
Yeah, well, you know, one of the seeds of the idea was that I always like movies about con games. It's a genre into itself, and it occurred to me one day that the difference between a psychologist of this type, a laboratory psychologist, and a con man is there's very little difference. That basically they both think that they know what you're going to do better than you know what you're going to do because they understand how the human brain works. So I thought, well, it'd be interesting to do a con movie where the con men aren't really criminals, but they have the same skill set that these con men who are criminals have, and they step out into the world and think they have the nerve to think that they can control the events without a laboratory the same way they can control them with a laboratory. I thought that was just a new take on it. And of course, I wanted people to be wondering every step of the way how much was truth and how much wasn't. And so as I slowly revealed things further back in time, my idea was, and you guys can tell me if it worked, but the idea was to hope that every time you got more information about Mekhi Phifer's character, you thought you knew everything you needed to know. And then there'd be another piece that would reveal more, and they go, okay, now I know everything I need to know, up until the very, very end. And you still, there's that one last piece that he's willing to die for his daughter. And as the counterfeiter says, when he drops the money off, he says, it's always good to have a plan B. And this was his plan B. Obviously, he hoped he wouldn't die, but he didn't mind it because he knew that the insurance policy was out there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is stepping out of the movie a little bit.
Okay.
Like you're saying that you talked to Martin Luther King's speechwriter.
Yes.
Okay, that I never really thought about that before. Does that mean, is it possible that Martin Luther King did not write his famous "I Have a Dream" speech? And did you discuss that with him? And have you ever considered doing like a documentary on that?
Yeah, there is a documentary in the works, actually. Actually, if you guys are going to be around, the film that's showing called The March features Dr. Jones. He's, I believe, the first person interviewed, and you've seen The March, right? He's the one who calls Birmingham, Alabama, Bombingham, and he's throughout the film. The book that we wrote together is called Behind the Dream, The History of the Speech That Transformed a Nation. Actually, I got that wrong. The Making of the Speech That Transformed a Nation. I should know the title of my own book. But yes, it is, there is a lot of subtlety to it, but in fact, Dr. Jones did write the first draft of that speech. He wrote it the night before, and the first, it's hard to break it into paragraphs, but Clarence will say the first 6 or 7 paragraphs that Dr. King delivers were basically verbatim what Clarence had written. The rest of the speech is improvised. If you watch the video closely, knowing that little piece of history now, you realize that the speech is not actually going that well at the beginning. And then he pushes his papers aside and he starts talking about the dream, and the speech shifts. So Clarence, from his perspective, he takes credit for the bad part of the speech, or the least successful part. But yes, it's Dr. Jones feels very strongly that that the team that helped Dr. King lead the movement as he was able to do is sort of lost to history. And he wants to take nothing away from Dr. King. Nobody does. But there are some people involved, including one white Jewish gentleman who has almost been erased from the record book entirely, called Stanley Levison, who contributed just an incredible amount to the iconography that allowed Dr. King to be the star that he was. I sort of akin it to being a movie star. There's a lot of people that do hard work to get Brad Pitt to seem like Brad Pitt. And nobody else could do what Brad Pitt does, but there are people involved. And that's the thing that people tend to forget. So before Dr. Jones leaves this earth, he wanted to put his 2 cents in, and he asked me to help.
Wow.
Yes?
You kind of touched on this a few minutes ago when you said that Mekhi Phifer's life insurance policy was his plan B.
Yes.
Was Sterling's character in on the fact that he had a plan B?
I would say not. That's really interesting. When we cut the film together, we found a lot, and you may have noticed them, there was a lot of shots of Sterling sort of looking to me anyway like he was realizing that his fate was sealed, like he was going to help but he wasn't going to get out of it alive. I cannot say for sure. It's interesting because Sterling read the script every day. He did not come to me with that question, but that would have been something that was, if you tell your friend to help you and say, by the way, I don't mind dying for this, no matter how tight you are, there's a chance that you would not get the help you need. And first and foremost, Mekhi Phifer's character needed his brother to believe that this could work, because it couldn't be done without him. So I would say he did not know about the plan B. I think he would be glad when he was lying at the bottom of that, in that ravine, and they'd all gone to hell. I think if you had told him then, don't worry, it's all going to work out even if you both get killed, then I think he would have been happy. He was willing to die. Yes?
What was your reasoning for telling the story, telling the narrative not in chronological order?
Mm-hmm.
Why did you
Right. Well, it's interesting. I'd be curious to know how many of you guys came to see the movie based on the description in the booklet.
Stuart, can you go closer? We don't
Yes.
see you.
Am I in the dark? Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason I ask is because, ideally with a film like this, you should know nothing. It's hard to get people to go see a film where they know nothing, so you have to tell them something. But the challenge for us was always, do we let people know that it's a social experiment or not? And we've tried it different ways. And people need to hear that hook to get excited about it. Otherwise, there's something about the imagery and the description that makes it look sort of typical, and I think it's anything but typical. The reason why it's typical is actually something that I had a lot of conversations about when I was auditioning actors, and that is, this is true, that scene where the suspect is handcuffed, seated, torn shirt, and the white sheriff is leaning over the table. They're in a jail cell. You can find a still, which basically has that geography and those characters from dozens of movies. And the actors that I would talk to, I could find from their own films frames that looked basically like that first frame where you see Mekhi. It's a cinematic icon in a way. And so it was very important to me that I get to that as early as possible in the film and start deconstructing it. And what I would say to investors is I would say, you've seen this image in dozens of movies, and what if I told you that everything you think you know about that image is wrong? And through through the unfolding of the story, you're going to unpack that image and you're going to reevaluate what you thought you were looking at. So it was very important to me to put people in a mindset where they thought they thought they had information, but what the information I was keeping from them was so critical that it would constantly, every 10 minutes or every 10 pages in the script, reframe how they looked at the situation. Another thing I was interested in doing was the first time you're in the jail cell, I was going for, and I'd be curious to know how this worked out, but I was going for a feeling that it's like stretching a rubber band right before it snaps. I wanted people to start thinking that the entire movie was going to take place in that jail cell, like they were watching a play. And it was very important to me to do that because when you've been arrested for something that you didn't do, which is what the character was claiming, and you're in that jail cell, everything is out of your hands. You are trapped in that space. And the only way you're going to get let out is if somebody lets you out. You can't do it for yourself. And I wanted to create that feeling that you guys in some ways were captive. And getting sort of stressed and sort of like, oh, how long can I look at this? Is this going to be these two guys forever and ever and ever? Oh, and it's not to say I wanted the film to be unpleasant, but I wanted to create a tension in you guys so that when we cut away and you see that car with that other African-American driver, you start going, oh, this isn't quite what I thought it was going to be. And again, the description that some of you may or may not have read may affect how that beginning part worked on you guys, but that was the goal at any rate.
And it worked.
Yeah.
It worked pretty well.
So and so again, just to wrap up, it's filling in information as you go along to reset why you're there and who's in control. I thought was very important. To me, it was like a chess game, and if you guys ever see it again, it's a film that rewards a second viewing because you can really watch, now that you know that Mekhi Phifer is trying to accomplish a certain thing, every line of dialogue, every move he makes is designed to elicit a certain reaction. And what I akin it to is there's a method of martial arts where you use your opponent's strength against him. And that's how I viewed, when I was talking to the actors, that's how I viewed the racism. Racism, that mentality of thinking you're better than somebody, thinking you're more human than somebody, is in fact like a sort of an ego puff, and it's sort of an armor. It's sort of a fake armor. And so the more you can get that character in that position of thinking that they're squeezing you down and that they're so much more superior to you, the less likely they are to see what it is you're doing, and their own weight is going to topple themselves over. So it was this idea of the guy in the handcuffs is actually the guy in charge. And you really do see it when you watch it, from the beginning again. Anything else? I can go all night. Yes?
So the fact that you was in an interracial relationship,
Yes.
did you incorporate that purposely for the movie, or can I
Did-
imagine because you go through all this
Did I come up?
discrimination?
Yeah, it was it was very much the idea that I wanted to. I was interested in the idea of having a character that you saw at the beginning of the movie and not again until the end, and if you could not connect that character to the rest of the film, what sense that would leave you with. So knowing what we know about movies, and this isn't straight on racism. This is media shorthand. If I showed you a 35-year-old African-American woman at the beginning and then faded into Mekhi Phifer in jail, every person in the audience would go, that's his wife and she's worried about him because he's in jail. And why? I didn't show you a wedding picture. I did show you a wedding ring. I don't know if you noticed it or not, but because of how we're trained. That's what film viewers do. They put two and two together. They're not really told anything. In a good film, they're not told anything. They think they are, but really, they're just picking up cards and collecting them and making a picture out of them. And so I wanted to play with that a little bit. One of my favorite pieces of set design. Are we okay on time? We gotta go.
Last question.
Okay.
Yeah,
all
last
right.
thing.
Just at the very end there, one of my favorite pieces of set design was behind the sick little girl, the biracial girl, is a drawing of her family. And I remember going to school and doing drawings, and the paper was always white. If you wanted to make your family, and I'm white, you draw, a circle and that's it. The color of the paper was the color of the family. Now, if I was going to draw an African-American person, I got to get a dark crayon and I got to scribble in like that. So I told the art director, well, we've got a, we have a, and the film is a little stylized, as you can agree. So I said, we have a biracial little girl. I said, I want you to find a piece of light brown paper, butcher's paper, and do a drawing of the family where the mother has to be colored in with a white crayon and the father has to be colored in with a brown crayon, and she's the color of the paper. And you only see it for a second, but it's on the wall behind her in her sickbed, and that to me is, again, turning these conventions on their edge and giving you things to think about. So I guess I will leave you with that. But thank you so much for coming out. I really hope you enjoyed it. And it will be out soon in theaters and Blu-ray and DVD and all that cool stuff. So tell your friends and family. Thanks.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you so much. We will be waiting for you tomorrow and the day after until September 29th. We have tons of films for you. Okay?
Thank you.
I hope you had a good night. Please Facebook about this film and about other films and about the festival. Twitter as well. Yes, Stuart. That was fantastic.
YouTube.
Oh, you're so good.
Oh, thank you, dear.
You're so good.
I appreciate
You're
that.
so good. I felt like sitting here and listening to you the whole night.